So we'll jump right in here. Without further ado, let's send it over to Steve Riddle, who's been in the precision farming field for over 35 years. So Steve knows his stuff. Steve, take it away.
All right, thanks. Thank you for the introduction. Again, Steve Riddle with DigiFarm. During the presentation here, I'm going to try to keep this a generic, little colorblind, talk about, all the aspects. I'll reference DigiFarm, a handful of times just in how we might tackle something and in comparisons. But wanted to start off, obviously, RTK. I assume everybody on the call here, and maybe you haven't, have heard that. And real-time kinematic is what it actually stands for. And a simple definition is it's a technique to increase the accuracy of GNSS, which let's substitute that for GPS signals, with a fixed base, which would be what we'd think of as a base station, sending corrections to a rover. And then the rover, if you ever hear that term, that's going to refer to the GPS unit that's on your tractor or equipment out in the field. So, but that's, you can probably find that definition in print, doing any kind of search. What we want to talk about today is there's rules for everybody, every RTK provider, and so we want to, and it all boils down to the accuracy and how things are done. So we're going to talk about, some expectations for accuracy. We're going to go over a few RTK options, radio RTK, which there's basically two forms. There's a portable radio RTK and then a tower mounted or grain leg mounted radio corrections. We're also going to go over and talk about single base cellular RTK offerings, and then a VBN or VRS and cellular RTK, and we'll explain those terms and how they differ from single base. And then there at the end, I've got quite a bit on cellular connectivity. That's an area that would all think in the perfect world it'd get better every day, but it's challenging and ends up being something that we wrestle with, and I think would be beneficial to spend some time on going over that. So why we need RTK, I don't want to assume that everybody's on the call is either running RTK today or quite sure, but this is great. Strip-till would actually be probably the most common and core customer that we have at DigiFarm using RTK. And it's about need to repeat passes throughout the grow season, repurposing or reusing that same guidance line. So a strip-till farmer is, if they've gone out and you've done strips in the fall right after harvest, you've already set the expectation of rerunning that pass to go back and plant, and then go back in and side dress and maybe cultivate and spray throughout the grow season, and then again even harvest. And so it's rerunning that initial guidance line when the strips were put in. So repeating passes with minimal error. The next one here, accurate field boundaries that won't shift, drift, or move. Every year there's always some sort of buzzword and accurate boundaries. Boundaries itself has been a term that comes up often as in today's precision ag role and on the agronomy side and everything we're doing or you're doing. Everything is a lot of those conversations start, well, first we need an accurate boundary of your field. It's got to be collected on RTK so it won't shift or move. A reason for that would be individual nozzle control on sprayers. If you've got that defining like waterways and things like that, the sprayer, each nozzle is turning on and off as it crosses into those zones that you've created as spray zones or no spray zones. We can't have those shifting and moving on you. And so that's been a huge one. That kind of goes along with the growth with individual nozzle control. And that would come into play too on a planter with individual row shut off. Um, the other thing, there are requirements for autonomous equipment. Might as well say that RTK accuracy is going to be demanded on any autonomous equipment out there. Nobody's sitting there on that piece of equipment and potentially nowhere to sit to begin with to witness a shift or a drift in a guidance line, and to be able to react. And do you need RTK on a grain cart? Well, if it's autonomous and only running several feet away from the head on the combine, on the platform, yeah, you do. We don't want a sudden shift bad things could happen pretty quick. So, maybe not normally, but in autonomous situations, yes. So we've seen that already with growth. The other common usages, I kind of explained a few of those there along the way. Vertical accuracy for using for tile plows, and then install an irrigation drip tape. There again, it's just another use. Marking out field trial plots, larger scale, trial plots. Actually seeing some guys use like a GPS unit from, like, say, a land survey industry, actually, out marking some of those. Less cumbersome as putting one, on a four-wheeler or doing something like that, but they're out marking, field plots. And it's always nice to get cost justification. Once you've got a RTK unlocked GPS unit and you're running RTK, do you need it in the combine, in corn? Yeah, sure. It really enhances the operator experience, hopefully make him a little less fatigued, but enhancing the accuracy of the yield maps. I've had guys, that was something they're after or looking at. Lastly, and probably I'm forgetting some things here, but another big one, this has been a big one the last couple of years, is drones. And for the most part, drones are actually very simple to provide RTK to. But when you think about it, a spray drone, just like if you were out in a traditional pull type or self-propelled sprayer running WAS, maybe 30 minutes out, that guidance line is going to shift or move on you. It's going to happen with a drone also. But you're not there, to witness that. So typically a spray drone will go out, 10 minutes later, it's coming back to get refilled, get new batteries, and and it could be experiencing some shift and drift on us here. All right. So rules for RTK, if you're looking into advancing to RTK, or maybe you're moving away from radio RTK and we're looking at different offerings. RTK, a lot of misconception is that I say RTK and everybody thinks sub-inch repeatable accuracy, and that's not necessarily true. There's a rule to play by, and it's the distance from the nearest base station that your GPS system sees. And that distance rule is at approximately every 10 miles from your GPS system and the nearest base that it sees, you'll lose about 1 inch of repeatable horizontal accuracy. And in order really to determine the vertical accuracy, like for tile plow, drip tape, anything we're controlling up and down vertically, whatever your estimated horizontal error is or stated error, double that to get your vertical. That's a rule for everybody. One thing you can do in all your displays, and I think I'll mention it again in the presentation, is all your displays that I've ever run across, when you're running RTK, there's somewhere you can typically go and read what the baseline distance is. And so that's something, if you're ever curious or really want to investigate, that's something to go look at. All right, getting into the types of RTK offerings. Portable radio RTK base stations, probably the most common usage in ag is it's in a field where vertical control is being done. Somebody's putting in tile, drainage tile, and just that close proximity of the base to where the GPS unit, I mean, that's going to be real close. I'm not going to argue that's going to be one of the most accurate ways to do that. I do have with DigiFarm, I can mention or explain a little bit later. We do have quite a few customers using us for vertical, but um, this is going to be restricted by line of sight, trees, hills, buildings, challenging that it needs a remote, power source. And the hard part is doing anything that's repeatable with a portable base. So you're going to go set a base up on a tripod or a post and do whatever work you're going to do. When you take that base station down and move it, if you ever want to go back and repeat, if you're off a half inch or an inch, remounting that in the same exact spot, or even if it's on a post and through freeze thaw cycles, maybe that post is shifted, elevation or side to side, that can be off by whatever that distance is, So we got to be cautious of some of the usages and trying to repeat passes with this. I'm seeing quite a few portable base stations being offered with drones and some other technologies. So just be cautious of a portable base and is it something that you're going to be doing that you want to repeat passes? It may not be a best thing to consider, or something certainly to question. Radio RTK base stations that are on a tower or a grain leg. I probably should have put my last bullet point here at the top. I'm seeing a lot of dealers are taking down their networks. Radio it's been out there forever. It's still doing its job, but as we grow into newer technologies, it may not be feasible to use a radio base station as far as that purpose anymore goes. If you're a grower and you own your own and it's up and operating and you don't travel more than 6 miles from where that base is and you got good line of sight, yeah, that's probably going to work until lightning hits it. But that's restricted. Again, it's line of sight restricted. And it's more prone to issues with weather and if that base goes down, it's difficult a lot of times to pull signal from another one a little further away because of it being line of sight issues there. So like I said, that I'm sure radio tower Green Lake based will always exist, but it is diminishing, and dealers are a lot of dealers. They say they're taking their networks down. Really, in this scenario, you got to argue if all along was that really a network, because the one base station doesn't know that the others exist. So I always look at it, it's just a bunch of them out there. One doesn't know that the other exists. All right, so moving along here. So the next step up would be single base cellular RTK. And probably the best example is most state CORS networks. And CORS, CORS, Constant Operating Reference Station, is what that stands for. So there's a fair number of states that have a network for their state, highway and county and commissioners and their projects and things, but and they may let the public access those, free or for a minimal cost. The problem with those is kind of in the drawing of the map there. Thinking of that 10-mile rule, most of those base stations are kind of spread apart, pretty long distance, and you may be, 20 plus miles, from a nearest base and trying to pull RTK. And if you're getting RTK, why, maybe you can get the correction signal, but the downfall is that distance there, it can diminish your repeatable accuracy. The other thing with the CORS networks, a lot of times they may not talk to all the brands of GPS systems out there. In the settings on the singular base, if you run across where it's talking about IMAX or nearest, a lot of times then what that means is you're pulling from either the nearest base station or the one that's got the strongest signal. But yeah, there's a few private networks for that are out there, or base stations that you can go buy that are cellular or buy their service. But be cautious. So you really got to know where it's at and in relationship to where you are to determine the repeatable accuracy. So moving along here, we get to our basically kind of our final step here, and this VBN and VRS cellular RTK, and I'll get into explaining what those two terms mean, but similarities to single base cellular RTK, they're not line of sight restricted, which is a good thing. They're not tower or grain leg mounted. They're typically like the two pictures there are examples of some DigiFarm installs. We're up on a 2-story roof line of a building, a good clear view of the sky, a secure mounting, and not that we all use the same hardware, but that's typical of what a single cellular base would be as well. I do know at DigiFarm we don't sell our base stations, so when we put one up, we've always got our own crew that goes out and does that, so we're better in control. It's a world of difference in some of the robustness of the mounting. And also similar to how a single base cellular would work, the GPS antenna is through a coax cable is plugged into a receiver router and into an internet connection, and it's communicating position data and satellite data back to, and as in case of DigiFarm, to our servers. And then we take it to that next step. The cellular signal then is sent from our servers out in the form of a data packet, same as what you would text message with. So those are all some similarities there of the single base cell and what's called a VBN or VRS network. I'd say the biggest thing in all this is the robustness of the mounting, and then I know DigiFarm, that like in that picture, those antennas are actually meet survey grade spec. We offer our service to under another company named Land Surveyors. So there's some atmospheric choke rings and leveling mount that has to be done and documented as well. So how does VBN or VRS differ than single base? And this is really important. So VBN, that's what we talk about here at DigiFarm. Virtual base network is what VBN stands for. VRS, if you ever see that, somewhat similar, just a different way to say it, virtual reference stations. So what we're doing is we're actually looking at, as an example here with DigiFarm, and this is actually an actual map of where some base stations are in Illinois, but when we see in the picture off to the right, there's a tractor and also a drone controller. So those are examples of what we could send RTK to. When we see those turn on, power up, that's when all the magic starts to happen. So we look at that position. So when those units power up, we look and literally triangulate that position of that machine or that GPS system amongst multiple nearby physical base stations. And then through in the picture here, what's called our data center, our servers, on our back end, we create a virtual base and position that very close to where the tractor or that GPS system is. And so that's why we're calling that a VBN or a virtual base network. It's not all virtual. We're using physical, lengthy survey processed base stations to do this with. And I've got another diagram here. So our base stations that have been surveyed in for a really long period of time are when we triangulate that position and create that virtual base. In this picture here, the center lower part of the picture is the virtual base that was created. and minimizes. So we're minimizing that distance from the tractor GPS or to the rover, the GPS in the field, to that virtual base. Well, a lot of times when a DigiFarm customer will look, that will appear as maybe being around 3 miles. And what that does, if we go back to that distance rule, that's shortening that distance, so we've got better, more consistent accuracy. So that would be something to, if you're out shopping, and looking at going to a cellular corrections, knowing, is this a single base or a VBN or VRS network, and how far away would my expected base be if it's, because that's what's going to determine the accuracy. So remembering that distance rule at 10 miles out, and then doubling for the vertical air. There again, all the GPS systems out there that I'm aware of, when they're unlocked or able to run RTK, you can go find that distance reading. So that's something, whether you're having problems in the field or looking at a new system or demoing or trying a system, that's something to check. And I'd mentioned doubling the horizontal air for vertical. And there again, something else to ask when if you're looking at migrating into cellular corrections or with any RTK network, is what all brands of GPS can they work with and communicate with. At DigiFarm, I don't know that we've ever been stumped by any brand that we couldn't work with. So that's if you're a mixed fleet farm or well, we'll buy enough stuff that it does the job today, but will it work with what I'm going to have tomorrow? So just be asking those same questions. Got to throw this in there. I really don't have much on or any other than this comment here. I guess there's a lot of satellite RTK offerings or RTK-like performance that are basically a satellite correction signal. And the best thing I can do is make sure that you're checking with whoever that provider is. Are those accuracy levels? Are they talking about pass to pass or repeatability? And if it's repeatability, is it for any time period? Is it for just in season or a year or two? I believe there's some that are, maybe they're in season and fine print, I think, is 9 months. And then there's a new one out, I think it's maybe around 3 or 4 years, repeatability. So just make sure and ask those questions. I'd hit on this here previous, but the base station installations and hardware used, that's a huge factor in accuracy and reliability. At DigiFarm, we don't sell any base stations. And we're still growing and adding coverage, but it's all based on opportunity. So we just try to be in better control of that and its robustness. It's a big factor. I'm going to get into this quite a bit more here in my last comment here. Hardware used to deliver the corrections, that's going to be a huge one here. We'll tackle and dive into. So if you're using multiple RTK providers, maybe you were with one system, but through purchase of a piece of equipment or something, you were given a year free or something of a different system. Or if you're migrating from one RTK provider to another, there can be, the big difference is going to be in that RTK provider's survey process and more or less the robustness of their base station installs and in your area, because that's where we see any kind of unpredictable errors or initial line shifts with guidance lines or boundaries. The best example, and probably the one we see the most, is if anybody's coming over from any kind of radio-based network Um, those base stations up on a grain leg or a tower, they were, put up and surveyed in for less than 24 hours. And because that base station doesn't talk to any other base stations around it, even though they may have more, there was no need to go beyond that. So it's really about, who's the survey process, and if the expectation would be, and I tell this to guys, if they're coming over to DigiFarm from a radio-based network, they've probably got saved guidance lines, and so if you go out with DigiFarm and go to where you had a saved guidance line that you would have been under one particular base because you had to uh, manage all your base IDs of what base was what field planted with, but if you discovered that there's no noticeable error pulling up one guidance line under what would have been one base, we're probably going to be that way with all your saved guidance lines under what would have been that one base. But if you go to another one and you're 2 inches or 6 inches off with the first one you try, good chance that all of them under that base are going to be off by 2 inches or 6 inches, whatever that would be. And there again, it all just goes back really to the survey process. Again, overkill for what we do in ag, but in the DigiFarm world, we actually use a service through NOAA called Opus, and we periodically on our back end with redundant server resurvey base stations. Opus through NOAA is they're actually accounting and taking in account any tectonic plate shift in the earth, which some areas it's very minimal, but it does exist. So there again, it's all about that survey process and that initial migration over from one company to another. Guidance lines you can shift and resave, but boundaries is the big one that you're going to run into trouble. If that they're off enough that maybe you've got to redo boundaries. The other thing with to ask about RTK base stations, a lot for a while now, a lot of these new GPS receivers, you go to your display and it'll say it's finding 20, 30 satellites, and it's like, wow, that only used to be 12 or 15 at the most. But there's new correction satellites that your GPS unit that you're using on your equipment, if it's new enough, it's seeing additional satellites through GLONASS, Beidou, and Galileo, and there are additional correction satellites, and it just helps. However, the question would be is the RTK provider, the GPS units that they're using at their base stations, are they also using those same satellites, the newer constellations? I know at DigiFarm for a fair number of years now, as we've added new base stations, and they've been capable, and then we've been doing either software or physical hardware updates to make sure that we can do that. But that just the more correction satellites we're seeing just helps. With RTK, there's got to be a set number of satellites in common with the base station as your GPS unit out in the field. So that helps achieve that minimum number by being able, both the base station and your unit on the tractor in the field, to be able to see to all have those all in common. Something else we're really running into is there's a lot of new GPS systems, auto steer, inexpensive units, few coming out of the US, but mostly a lot from overseas, and are ready to go to use RTK. And we've got some of those running. There again, it's if you're looking at those, you're going to be asking the same questions with the RTK provider. Nothing's any different. Most of these systems, Field B, FJ Dynamics, there's a handful of others. The GPS units are all talking and a language or what that we can communicate the RTK to them, but just ask all these questions and considerations here. The other thing we're running into more and more every day is RTK through in-trip, and so that's a term you're going to start hearing more and more. It's becoming more common. In-trip is a protocol, and so it's not necessarily new. Really, all these modems that we've used over the years, and I'll show some examples of modems. You would program what's called the in-trip into the modem itself. Well, today, the 3 screenshots I got down there are examples where in the display itself is this in-trip settings, and you can program in, say, DigiFarm, we have our credentials that you would program into these displays to access a DigiFarm RTK correction signal. And so what happens is more and more today, you're connecting your display in your cab actually just to a Wi-Fi source. The picture on the left, the far left there is actually a screenshot from a DJI controller for one of the spray drones. And it says their in-trip host and port. Any cellular RTK provider is going to have basically those 2 numbers that you're given. Like if I gave you those numbers for DigiFarm, connects you to the DigiFarm servers. And then there's asking for a username and a password. And then those are assigned when you get a subscription, say from DigiFarm. And the mount point is based on what GPS unit is that you're using. What's the language that cellular RTK provider say, DigiFarm, we need to talk, and we'll tell you what that is to enter in there. So if somebody says in-trip into a display, that's going to be where you're going to take information provided from that RTK provider and program it into the display. In this case, on the drone, we actually program it into the DJI controller, and the controller pushes it out to the drone. And then the one in the middle, that's actually an ag leader in command. They're what's going to become their legacy in command, because they just came out with a new display. They've been doing that for a good maybe 5-6 years. And then the one off to the right, I believe that's a screenshot actually out of an FJ Dynamics auto steer Chinese branded controller, but that's existing in a lot more equipment today. In all scenarios like this, what you're doing is you're actually connecting your display in the cab to a source of a hotspot, and I'll get into that part of that discussion here. But yeah, this is why radio is starting to go away, radio RTK, because that doesn't facilitate this this avenue here for in-trip. Cellular connectivity, and this is really important here. When you're talking to an RTK provider, I know when you talk to DigiFarm, we're gonna quiz a lot on the cell connectivity, wherever you are. As an example, at DigiFarm, we have a Bluetooth option to work with an iPad, but we also have a dedicated modem device. And there's a world of difference in, if you told me that you're in an area that really is weak on cell signal, and you can't even send a text message in a field, in one of your fields, I'm going to steer you away from using the iPad with our Bluetooth device, and I'm going to steer you over towards our Elevate Slim modem, just because of the difference in the robustness of being able to pick up that cell signal and deliver the RTK corrections. So the iPad, DigiFarm, we've always had an app to run on an iPad, and then our Bluetooth piece. So we're using the iPad with a data plan. Yours, we don't provide that, but we're using that as basically as the modem, and then we Bluetooth the corrections, and the Bluetooth device is plugged in typically then wherever we would have plugged in one of our hardwired Elevate Slim modems. The difference there, I talked to a lot of guys about this, and always the question is, well, can I use my iPhone? Let's say they said that, oh gosh, our cellular is awesome and wherever we farm, we're okay. We don't drop calls. I want to know where that is because I might want to move there too. So, um, but the iPhone and the iPad, just between those two, has got a huge difference in its cell capability because the internal antenna is so much different. So we always say if we're going to talk to you about using maybe you've already run an iPad in the cab with climate or some other, and it just makes more economical sense to do that. And you're the owner operator and tech savvy, but I don't want guys using an iPhone. It's just a world of difference in that cellular reception. The little device there's the iPhone, iPad, and our Bluetooth beacon piece. The piece next to it to the right is a screenshot of a what do you call them, a jetpack or a MiFi device. We're seeing a lot of these being used as a hotspot source for drones in particular. That's better than using the hotspot off your phone or the hotspot even off of an iPad, and it's a dedicated device. A lot of guys that are using drones, we're seeing them, install one of these or just have it in the drone trailer, and you're using that to connect and enable the Wi-Fi capability on the drone controller. In case of, I know, like the DJIs, and then that way we can communicate through in-trip the corrections. There again, we're counting on the robustness of that MiFi jetpack device to pick up the Wi-Fi capability to do its job and maintain a good connection. If that breaks and is inconsistent and isn't robust, it's going to disrupt the RTK correction signal, and that's something we've definitely have run across. I've got growers that are using our Elevate Slim modem, and then they flew a drone and they're using a hotspot, and they're asking, well, what's different about the correction signal we're sending to the drone? Because the Elevate Slim modem, they don't have a lick of trouble, but yet they struggle with the MiFi jetpack and the drone. And it's that connectivity is what's different. The signal, our RTK signal, isn't any different. It's still the same. The other big one I run across here is, or we run across, when you're looking and maybe you're going into or adding additional units on a cellular RTK network, the robustness and in the antennas that are used for that cellular modem device or that hotspot it can be a world of difference. To the right of that little MiFi jetpack device, there's a modem with 3 antennas sticking up, and that's the BR1 Mini. We at DigiFarm sell that, and that's what Ag Leader Up has been using for a hotspot source for their Ag Leader in Command display. So there again, that Ag Leader in Command has capability of doing RTK through the in-trip, but that hotspot for Ag Leader and other situations, that enables them to do other features like Agfinity, display cast, remote support. Some of those, it enables those features. So that's why that's chosen. The world of difference can be that I can have a customer with that BR1 Mini that's in that picture with the little stick antennas, and then the one that DigiFarm we sell, skip the whip antenna there and go over to that layered black, we call it the double shot glass. It's like stacking 2 shot glasses on top of each other. Instead of those 2 little stick antennas, we use 2 of the double shot glass antennas. And there can be a huge difference in performance in getting the enabling that Wi-Fi connection and for that BR1 Mini by the difference in the antennas. There again, that's important because we've got to maintain that connectivity between the hotspot and the in-command display. And then we see in the middle there, that's just looks like a little whip antenna on a magnet base. I've seen some of those used with BR1 minis as well through other providers, and maybe they'll have one of those on the main connection and one on the diversity. And if we get into cellular problems with some of these devices, those are some of the first things we're looking at. If it's not one of our Elevate Slim modems, that's one of the first things we're questioning is what are we using for a modem, and what style antennas, and where are they positioned at, for optimizing that connectivity, because that's, I don't want to say it's 9 times out of 10, but it's a lot that we're struggling, or guys are struggling with cell connectivity, out in remote areas. And so that's what we're trying to improve. But those are things you need to be aware of and question and pay attention to, whether it's a system you've got today or looking at buying or converting or adding systems, is that cellular connectivity. Moving along with that, there again, a lot of times when you're out buying a modem device or there's one that's offered, is what carriers are available that you can run on it. And we've witnessed this. We've got our Elevate Slim modem and some older modems out, that have been working on. Verizon was always strong in outside of populated areas, and it seems like AT&T is, as an example, maybe in some areas has gotten stronger and better. So ask your RTK provider if that's who you're going to be getting your modem from. Can I change out SIM cards if one eventually a year or two down the road becomes better, or within a short period of time? And how will that work, and what are the options for that? Just know those. Also, ask about if you've got areas that maybe one carrier is really good in an area that you're in, but you go to another farm in another area, and it's almost like it flip-flops. Are there multi-carrier SIM cards where it switches on the fly? And what carriers are there? How does it switch? How does it prioritize? We've at DigiFarm, we have an option for that as well. And it's got its fit, and sometimes we end up sticking with a dedicated carrier. Each call is a little different in what we end up talking about and what we start with and where we end up with. So there again, just ask about that. Modem devices that support dual SIM cards. My Elevate Slim does not, but I know the BR1 Mini that we offer, it does. And so in situations where it's being used as the hotspot for, say, an ag leader in command, there's a few times I've got guys that will activate a Verizon and an AT&T SIM card, and there again, it's because of they're traveling long distances, and they get in and out of coverage from different carriers that seem to shine well one over the other. And what you need to know here is, and this would be maybe more so on this, if I've got to switch what my in-trip display is connected to for a hotspot source, what are those steps that I've got to do? Because more likely you're going to do it in the field or as you change fields. And so whether it's an ag leader or whatever the display is, and it's using the in-trip settings, and in this example, be a BR1 Mini, know what the steps are, or ask that. Is it very difficult to do that? Another thing here is if you're looking for RTK solutions and a provider, and whoever the data plan is going to come through. In DigiFarm's case, we offer those and love to offer that. Elevate Slim, it's mandatory, but any modem device, whether it's my Elevate Slim or other modems out there that we've utilized before or can utilize, they all typically have got lights on them, and those lights represent something. So know what the key is for those as to okay, this light's blinking, this color, this frequency, what does that mean? That's a excellent indicator of cellular connectivity. When it says there's one there that's talking about signal, and a light's blinking, that's not the RTK signal. That's your cellular signal. And then with DigiFarm, as an example, with my Elevate Slim, on a service portal that the dealer or our tech support people can see, we can actually, whether it's live or in history, we've got an indicator map that also talks about the cell connectivity. So, check with your RTK provider or ask those questions when you're shopping. Are these things that are available for support side? The other thing is, a lot of guys say, well, I've got 3 bars on my phone, that should be good. Well, that's their phone, not the modem device. And so also as a support mechanism, there's what's called a dB gain scale, and it's measuring the strength of your cell signal. And this is something else that we have tools or resource for, and something else we utilize a lot, from a support mechanism. So there again, there are more specific indicators of cell connectivity that we can diagnose or we maybe even tell up front, what some things look like for a customer. Getting close to wrapping up here. So this kind of summarizes really a lot about what we talked about. With DigiFarm, we actually have a brochure that talks about the 4 paths to RTK. And so more and more every day, we're coming across OEM installed modems. As an example, like an AGCO, all their equipment has got like what's called a VDO4 modem. Case has modems, and a Raven Slingshot modem. Those are all what I call an open source modem, and they have the in-trip programming that we can use those modem devices if it makes sense, that you may already have in a piece of equipment, and provide our RTK corrections through that, so we're not being redundant. Path 2 would be there's no OEM modem to use. I will say though that I do get a few times where Path 1 is still there, but with whether it's the dealer or the grower or DigiFarm, we recommend to go Path 2 with our Elevate Slim modem, because we can optimize, and all our modem is doing is just RTK corrections, where the other modems are also maybe doing a lot of remote support, machine-to-machine communication, file transfer functions. So it's tackling a lot, and we can optimize the performance on the Elevate Slim modem. But if you don't have an OEM installed modem, then Path 2 would be our Elevate Slim modem. Or if you're in a really good cell area and maybe you've already got an iPad in the cab with a data plan, we may pursue our Bluetooth beacon route. Path 3 would be specifically BR1 Mini for displays with in-trip that need a robust hot solution. Best example, Ag Leader in the in-command. And then drones, we don't need any hardware. Everything there is existing on what they provide, and so it's just the RTK subscription that is needed. Again, a cellular RTK correction. So RTK for the future, definitely there's going to be less radio. RTK will be used, and I think it's going to change pretty fast and furious. But there'll always be some out there. OEM equipment, I think we'll have more multi-purpose modem devices as standard. We just see that more and more every day. In-trip programming and GPS systems and displays will be more common. That's a given also. We're seeing that already. And that's nothing new too. And that'll in theory, that makes things a little easier, and you just need to connect to a hotspot source. And lastly, and this is really what we wrestle more every day than anything is, until cell networks become more reliable, robust, and well-covered areas like their maps show, we got to do everything we can to ensure the connectivity, because that's how that RTK correction signal through cellular and from DigiFarm is getting to you. So we got to do everything we can, with antennas and hardware devices and just optimizing everything that we can for you. So, no, I think we got that. I rolled through that there. Hopefully beneficial and clear for the most part.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, you're a machine. You covered a lot in that 50 minutes. Um, if anyone has any questions right now, though, type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and you can pass those along to Steve. We have a couple minutes. Yeah, how big of an issue is rural connectivity? You hear about that a lot at precision conferences. You know, that being a challenge for standing in the way of more farmers adopting precision technology. You think that's a pretty big problem right now?
Well, it always has been, and it's a big part of our discussion with customers, when they first inquire. And kind of an easy way is, so the RTK correction signal we send out is in the form of a data packet, like what you text message. So I'll just simply ask, hey, in your worst field, can you send a text without, and will it send and not fail to send? And so if it'll go through and send and it never fails, we should be fine with what we need to do. But if it's, I can't fix no service. So that's the other part of that. I will say this, and maybe something I should have brought up. If in cellular RT corrections, if a receiver doesn't see a correction signal and more than 1 minute goes by, that brand of receiver will go back into whatever fallback mode it was designed for. Some have a fallback mode that will hold some pretty decent accuracy, for a short period of time. And some just have a slow couple minute transition back to WAS. So those are things that worst case scenario, we may fall back on, just to get to the other end of that field, or move 10 feet. Now I got signal again. It's all part of it. But yeah, it's definitely in the perfect world to get better every day, but it doesn't. And that's the frustrating part.
Well, we have a question from the audience. They want to know, how do these solar storms affect GPS, and is RTK more susceptible to the solar storms?
All GPS systems are affected, and RTK none less than any others. And it's actually affecting not so much the RTK correction signal, but the satellite count drops dramatically. A solar storm, they're pretty to look at, but a way it was described to me is if you're looking at something through straight on, but say a flashlight shining through, straight to your eyes, and then now you shine it through a tank of water, a fish tank, it gets distorted, and that's what it's doing with the GPS signal. And so it affects everybody, us no less than, it wasn't any system more so than the others, and that was huge this year. That was for everybody though. I'd say what saved maybe there would be, what kind of a fallback does a GPS system have? But those lasted well above and beyond the time limit, of all those. But yep, good question. Good question.
All right, we have another question coming in now from the audience. Is DigiFarm RTK VBN service available for John Deere OEM Starfire 6000 receiver, modem, and in-cab 2630 display?
Yes, I cannot use the John Deere modem. The 6000 receiver would have to be unlocked to RTK, and then I can use either my Elevate Slim modem or our Beacon option. And we've got a lot of those out. That's not something we just do once in a while.
All right, here's another question, Steve. If I can see the tower from my tractor, will InTrip be the best system?
InTrip would be dependent upon really what brand of GPS that, I know Ag Leader uses InTrip. Um, and I'm assuming the tower, he's meaning the cell tower. And so really it would depend on that modem device, whether it's like say our Elevate Slam, the BR1 Mini would with our dual shot glass antennas would be very comparable. Um, and then another step down would be going to say our Bluetooth beacon device because it's more susceptible to a weaker cell signal. So yeah, that'd be more dependent, not necessarily in trip, but the in trip depends on like I said, if it's an ag leader, Trimble, Raven, how they tackle that, and it would be dependent upon the modem device. Yeah, with that they would be using.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Well, if anyone, here's one. Would DigiFarm VBN work with the Agra GPS CRG receivers?
Yes. Yes, I do know. I've had a handful. They've got a version where there's a modem built in. And I know we've got a few of those that are out running. So they basically that can become a little bit lengthier discussion if they'd want to reach out to me and stuff. But in a nutshell, yes, and it's got a built-in modem. It actually talks more of the same language as what a Trimble receiver does. But yeah, we can send RTK to that Agra GPS unit. I would suggest getting the unit that they have that's got the modem built into it because I do know they offer it without it. But
Tim wants to know if I wanted to use a survey rover pole with smartphone to navigate to small plot trial markers, would beacon be the choice?
I'm going to guess that actually that he said something about a phone there. Is that correct?
If I wanted to use a survey rover pole with a smartphone, yeah, to navigate to small plot trial markers.
I'm going to say he's probably already got an in-trip client built into their app. There's an MLID Mark II, I believe, or an MLID Mark something that's a RTK GPS unit on a stick that uses an app on a phone, and they've got in-trip built into their app. So we may not need anything for hardware in that case. MLID Reach 2 also is another similar unit, but it's all built within the receiver.
Wayne wants to know if you have software for yield maps.
I don't do anything with data collection, just the RTK correction signal.
Got it.
Yep.
And if anyone has any other questions that pop up after this webinar, what's the best way to get a hold of you? I know you're also at a lot of shows too, so.
Yeah, they can under contact us at DigiFarm. Actually, if anybody wants to email me is fine. Can I give them out email address or?
Yeah, go for it.
Yep. So Steve at digifarm.com, and you can always call my number as well. The work cell number is 815-915-6954.
Yeah, and then we just had a follow-up comment from remember the question about they want to know if they can see the tower from the tractor. Will Intrip be the best system? Reynold, he says it's a Trimble with a tower for both cell and internet. He says, thank you very much. Useful information. Planning to use it for elevation.
Okay.
All right. Well, 3:00. Boy, that hour just flew by. So thanks a lot, Steve. Great stuff as always.
Thank you much. That was fun.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. And on behalf of Strip Till Farmer and DigiFarm, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great one.
Thank you, everyone.
See you later.